Lina tried to convince herself that the pull she felt toward Mira was nothing more than admiration, the kind any paramedic might feel toward a skilled doctor. But every time she saw Mira moving through the focused, graceful, yet carrying a quiet sadness in her eyes, Lina felt something in her chest shift. She began noticing the smallest details. The way Mira pressed her lips together when she was worried, the way she adjusted her glasses when she was deep in thought, the way her voice softened whenever Lina spoke. Mira, too, found herself paying attention in ways she hadn't in years. She looked for Lina's arrival before she even realized she was waiting. The sound of Lina's footsteps across the floor somehow calmed her, grounding her in the middle of chaos. She wondered why a paramedic's presence could make her heart steady in ways nothing else did. One night, after a difficult accident case, their hands brushed while transferring a patient. It was brief, barely a second, but they both froze, breath caught, as if the moment had cracked open something they had carefully kept shut. Neither spoke of it, and yet neither could forget it. Lina walked away that night pretending nothing had happened, but her heartbeat betrayed her. Mira remained standing near the stretcher long after Lina had left, fingers curling slightly, remembering the warmth of that accidental touch. Both women returned home with the same silent truth echoing in their minds. This connection was no longer something they could explain away. It was growing, quietly, steadily, and they were powerless to stop it. Lina tried to ignore the way her day felt different whenever she knew Mira would be on shift. She reminded herself that she had always been dedicated to her work, always focused, yet lately, focus felt impossible whenever Mira stood nearby. Mira had a way of looking at her as if she could see beyond the uniform, beyond the practiced calm, straight into the person Lina rarely showed the world. It made Lina uneasy, but it also made her feel seen in a way she had never experienced before. Mira, meanwhile, found her carefully built walls slipping. She had spent years keeping emotions out of her workplace, believing that letting anyone in would only lead to distraction or heartbreak. But Lina didn't storm past those walls, she gently softened them simply by being herself. Mira noticed how Lina never complained, how she steadied others with a touch or a quiet word, how she pushed through exhaustion with a smile that somehow made Mira's chest warm. Their moments together grew more frequent and more charged. Sometimes, Mira would catch Lina watching her from across the and Lina would quickly look away, cheeks warming. Other times, Lina would walk into the trauma room, and Mira's expression would soften so visibly that even the nurses exchanged knowing looks. Still, neither woman dared to name what was happening. It was safer to pretend it was nothing, safer to hide behind professionalism and silence. And yet, their hearts refused to cooperate. One late afternoon, after a particularly long shift, Mira handed Lina a cup of coffee, her favorite kind, exactly the way she liked it. Lina blinked, surprised and touched. "You remembered?" she asked, voice softer than she intended. Mira looked away for a moment, fighting a smile. "Of course I did." It was such a simple gesture, almost trivial in the middle of a busy hospital, but to both of them, it felt like a confession, wordless, delicate, but real. As Lina left the that evening, she felt something quietly changing inside her, something that terrified her as much as it thrilled her. And Mira watched her go with the same unspoken realization. They were crossing a line, slowly, irresistibly, and neither of them truly wanted to turn back. Lina tried to tell herself she was imagining things, that Mira's small gestures were just simple kindness. But every time Mira's hand brushed hers while taking a chart, or every time their eyes met across a crowded hallway, something warm settled in Lina's chest. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't sudden, it was slow, steady, and impossible to deny. Mira wasn't just a doctor she respected anymore, she was becoming the person Lina unintentionally searched for the moment she stepped into the Mira felt it too. She had always been disciplined with her emotions, but around Lina, restraint felt useless. She noticed the way Lina's presence eased her stress, how her voice steadied Mira's breathing during chaotic cases. She noticed Lina's quiet bravery, her compassion, the softness she tried to hide. And every time Lina smiled, really smiled, Mira felt something inside her melt. Their interactions grew more meaningful without either of them planning it. One night, after a particularly difficult trauma case, Lina found Mira sitting alone in the staff corridor, shoulders tense and eyes tired. Without thinking, Lina placed a bottle of water beside her and sat down quietly. Mira looked at her, surprised by the simple companionship. "You don't have to stay," she whispered. Lina gave a small smile. "I know." That moment wasn't big, but it was enough. Enough to ease Mira's trembling breath. Enough to make Lina's heart ache with a feeling she didn't dare name. They sat side by side in silence, two exhausted souls sharing the same air, the same unspoken longing. It felt like the world outside had paused, leaving only a fragile space where their hearts could speak freely, even if their lips didn't. It was still unspoken, still delicate, but the truth was there, glowing quietly between them. They were no longer drifting toward each other by accident. Something was pulling them closer, consistently, gently, undeniably, and deep inside, both knew they were already too far along to walk away. Lina didn't know when it happened exactly, when Mira's presence stopped feeling like a coincidence and started feeling like a necessity. It might have been during a late-night emergency when Mira's hand lingered a second too long against hers. Or maybe the moment she caught Mira smiling to herself after Lina said something unintentionally sweet. Whatever spark it began with, it had grown into a warmth Lina carried with her everywhere. Mira was no longer just a respected doctor, she was becoming the quiet thought in Lina's mind between every call, the memory that softened the edges of her long, exhausting days. And Lina, strong, steady Lina, was becoming the anchor Mira didn't know she needed. Mira found herself scanning the doors whenever sirens echoed in the distance, hoping this time Lina would walk through them. She tried to hide it, but even the nurses had noticed the way Mira's expression brightened the moment she saw her. Despite the growing closeness, both women lived with the tension of unspoken limits. Rules, responsibility, fear of missteps, everything warned them to stay cautious. Yet every shared smile, every lingering touch, every soft look pushed them a little further over that invisible line. It was as if fate kept placing them together, and neither had the strength or desire to resist. One evening, after a particularly draining shift, Lina and Mira found themselves alone in the supply room, restocking after an emergency. Their hands brushed again, but this time neither immediately pulled back. Mira looked up, breath catching, and Lina felt her heartbeat stutter. The room was silent except for the soft hum of the lights, but between them, something louder pulsed, an emotion they had pretended not to feel for far too long. Mira swallowed, her voice barely above a whisper. Why does it feel like this keeps happening on purpose? Lina didn't answer at first. She just looked at Mira, really looked at her, the exhaustion in her eyes, the softness behind her strength, the vulnerability she never showed anyone but her. Then, in a voice quiet but honest, she replied, maybe because it is. It wasn't a confession, it wasn't a promise, but it was the closest either of them had come to acknowledging what was building between them. And in that moment, standing inches apart, both women felt it, the shift, the certainty, the truth neither could deny anymore. Something was changing, something real. Slowly, the spaces between them began to shrink. Neither of them meant for it to happen, but they found themselves drawn closer with every passing day. A simple exchange of glances turned into lingering looks, and brief touches became moments that neither of them could forget. Even the hospital staff began to notice the way Mira's voice softened when she spoke to Lina, or how Lina's tired face brightened the second Mira entered the room. Yet no one said anything, some connections were too delicate, too pure, to interrupt. One night, after a series of difficult cases, Lina found Mira sitting alone in an empty corridor, her shoulders slumped with exhaustion. Without hesitation, Lina approached and sat beside her. They didn't speak at first. They didn't need to. Silence had become its own language between them, filled with understanding and comfort. Mira finally looked at her, eyes soft and a little vulnerable. How do you always know when to find me? She whispered. Lina gave a gentle smile. Maybe because I'm looking for you too. Mira's breath caught, not dramatically, but in a quiet way that felt more meaningful. For a brief moment, her fingers brushed against Lina's on the bench. Neither pulled away. The world outside felt distant, replaced by the soft hum of hospital lights and the steady rhythm of two hearts learning to beat closer together. It wasn't a confession, it wasn't a declaration, but it was something deeper, a silent acknowledgement of everything they had been carrying inside. Their fear, their longing, the tenderness they didn't yet know how to express aloud, all of it lived in that small, fragile touch. And as they sat there, side by side, both understood something important. Their story was no longer just forming, it was unfolding. Slowly, gently, beautifully. A love that hadn't been spoken yet, but was already being felt with every glance, every breath, every heartbeat shared in the quiet corridors of the hospital.